Tramp Stamp.
Presented by Still a Frog.
The problem with divorces is that they're never really over. First, there's the bitter infighting associated with custody if kids are involved, the epically unfair carving up of assets, not to mention the piles and piles of emotional baggage that get crammed into the free spaces of your heart. And while none of that ever seems to go away, what's even worse are those intangibles, or perhaps in this case I should say indelibles, those things which you have no earthly idea what to do with. Allow me to paint a picture. Senior year of college, I'm backpacking through Europe. This is before the movie Taken and Liam Neeson had young people, particularly young girls, rethinking the wisdom of traveling between random foreign countries, armed with nothing more than some desperately in need of laundering delicates, the obligatory Parisian baguette stuffed into a knapsack, a few traveler's checks, and a single pair of disreputable-looking hiking boots. Anyway, I'm apart from my fiancé, who's waiting for me back in the States. We're to be wed as soon as I returned. Homesick, or more accurately, lovesick, or maybe just sex-starved, I celebrate my 21st birthday with a tattoo. Wait for it, big red heart penetrated by Cupid's arrow bearing none other than his name, and I'll give you one guess where. You don't think, as you lie prone on a black vinyl table, wincing while a swarm of bees takes up cause against your skin, that perhaps this is a mistake. You don't think to yourself, maybe I should stop and just sleep on this one. At the age of 21, you don't expect love will end. At 21, you're about beginnings only. Still too young and not jaded enough yet to realize life itself is wildly capricious and shockingly temporary. So how fucking permanent can a marriage be? Nevertheless, I still should have made better choices when it came to that which would be permanently etched upon my flesh. In fact, my traveling companion at the time had warned me about getting some guy's name branded just slightly above my derriere, after which, incidentally, she went off to have both of her nipples pierced. 17 years later, I lost the battle with my ex over the signed collector's edition Thomas Kincaid, but I still had the damn tattoo. I was in limbo after the divorce. Many suddenly single women of a certain age can commiserate, I'm sure. He'd moved on with a woman who was a much better match for him, far more so than I was. I'd also started dating. It was fun and exciting, except for the part that was humiliating and disastrous, which I would say is a fairly accurate summation of the experience of finding love when you're nearly 40. It wasn't all a comedy of errors, mind you. There were definitely some highlights. And the sex, when you're divorced, is truly an adventure. It's difficult to explain. You feel liberated and freer than perhaps you had within the weekend night-only rules and regulations of the marital bed. There's a daring element to making love again that you hadn't experienced in what seemed like forever. In the 2 years since my divorce, I'd met a few men with whom I was eager to take that conjugal next step. And by a few, I'm not talking Cecil B. DeMille cast of thousands too big for the silver screen. I mean more than 2. So 3. That first one, especially, being touched by a man who wasn't my husband, initially it felt strange. But then, I don't know, I was able to give myself with reckless abandon to the mystery of the moment, the tantalizing uncertainty of what would happen next. In some ways, the best I'd ever had. It was a rebound fling, though, and unfortunately those were not really designed for anything more than a few breathless, sweaty rolls in the hay, accompanied by the requisite but largely untrue, "I'll be there for you" banter. I fell hard for the second guy. He was handsome and charming, always knew exactly what to say given my mood. I swear he could read my mind. This one could have lasted. At the time, I could even picture him nightly settled into my leather sofa, his body gradually forming its own his side of the couch imprint. Beyond the sex, there was just this comfortable feeling that I never thought I'd experience again following my divorce. Just goes to show you, you can't ever get too comfortable. We had just finished enjoying one another's carnal company, and I got up to get some water. "I never knew you had a tattoo, and a tramp stamp to boot," he laughed. "Yeah, I was young and dumb back then, what can I say?" "What is it of?" he asked. The lights were very dim, so he really couldn't tell from his vantage point on the bed. "Well, this could be awkward." "Actually, I'm getting it removed, just haven't had the chance, or the money," I chuckled. "What is it?" he persisted. "A heart with my ex's name," I quietly confessed. And that took care of that relationship. He seemed stunned, disgusted, angered, all of the above. I wasn't quite sure. I do know that he mumbled something about having to pick up his kid early in the morning, then hightailed it out of there. Back to a couch for one. I really did intend to have it removed. Of course, I never knew it would have quite that effect as to make a man run screaming from my bedroom. But the procedure just cost so much, and the prospect of pain over the course of several treatments, even greater than that of the tattoo itself, was certainly at least a momentary deterrent. But then I started seeing the third guy. He was smart and clever, yet not in any sort of way that made you feel intimidated or patronized. Every part of his heart was accessible. We spent days hiking nearby trails, biking through the park, picnics on the beach. As sappy as it sounds, our relationship really was that classic movie montage where all seems to be ridiculously, even idyllically romantic. We took it slow. He said that he wanted our first time to be something that would make me blush from then on whenever the word sex was mentioned. Still branded with the imprint of he whose name would have been long forgotten were it not for the tattoo on my ass, I decided before this monumental meeting of the flesh, as it were, that I should come clean. No surprises, no appalled looks. "I need to tell you something," I began. "Sure, hun." He called me hun. "Please still like me," I inwardly beseeched the gods of Match.com. "I have a tattoo. On my back. My lower back. So, yes, a tramp stamp." "Okay," he grinned. "I think tattoos are sexy." "Well, this one I've been meaning to get removed. It's just an expensive process, and, well, then there's the pain factor." I stammered through my explanation. "What is it of?" There was the question. "It's a heart with my ex-husband's name." I was young. It was like 20 years ago when we were first engaged. It means absolutely nothing that it's still there. I'm not holding on to some unrequited feelings for him or anything. I mean, these things don't just wash off. Like I said, I haven't gotten around to it. Do you hate me? Does it repulse you? I winced, bracing for the worst. "No, it doesn't repulse me. I can't say it doesn't bother me a little bit. After all, it is some other guy's name," he half smiled. "But I understand." His eyes, though, seemed a little less enthusiastic than just prior to the conversation about the regrettable body ink. That was it. It was time. The next morning I made the appointment, not, however, for removal, rather for the far less expensive and less painful cover-up. It was thus back to a tattoo parlor for the first time in 20 years. He seemed relieved at my decision, though he just said, "You need to do what's best for you," with a sheepish smile. The thing was frickin' huge. It took 3.5 hours to complete. Initially, the girl who was doing my tattoo, upon lifting up my shirt, chuckled out loud. "The quintessential tramp stamp," she observed in giggly 19-year-old fashion. "Yep," I snapped back, surprised that she knew the word quintessential. I know, not nice, but I get defensive being made to feel old or ridiculous. "What happened? Break up with the guy?" Yeah," I said, my mouth muffled by the table. "Well, then, very good choice," she offered, happily observing her handiwork. "Thanks." That night he came to my place bearing flowers and chicken soup. "I know you're not sick or anything, but you are recovering in a way," he joked. "It's not so bad," I laughed, "and this is so sweet." We kissed. "So, can I see it?" He almost seemed like a little boy on Christmas morning getting ready to open a large oblong-shaped package that promised a BB gun as opposed to socks or savings bonds. Turning around, I gradually peeled back my shirt. That's absolutely amazing. It's perfect. I can't believe how perfectly you it is. I love it, he gushed. I love you, he said, for the first time ever, and we both knew it was not for the last.